This week, a program entitled The American Experience in Color. Tybee MLK would like to express great appreciation to the Tybee Post Theater for partnering with us to sponsor and host this event tonight and this series of events this week. The director is awesome, so is Steve and all the volunteers that are here. We are grateful for our Tybee Post Theater. Tomorrow evening, the Post Theater will sponsor the movie Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And Friday night, they will show The Imitation of Life. On Saturday, Chris Matthews, recording artist and expert in the music of the Civil Rights era, will present a workshop at 2 p.m. on Saturday and a concert at 8 p.m. on Saturday. And since you came tonight, you will receive a coupon for buy one, get one free to the Chris Matthews concert. That is a $20 value. So as you depart, be sure to get your coupon. All right, so there you have it. Let's see. So I want to invite Mrs. Julia Pierce, the founder and director of the Tybee MLK Human Rights Organization, to come and bring a word of welcome to us. In 2020, we had a city councilwoman by the name of Nancy Levesque.
And this resolution talks about Tybee is 133, getting ready to be 134 years old. And so we have a lot of history to catch up on, a lot of information that needs to be out. So as you came in, we have brochures. Please pick up these wonderful brochures from Tybee MLK. Our sponsors paid for these brochures. Please, if you need a copy on Tybee, please go to the Tybee. They're one of our sponsors. Please, just pay attention to our sponsors. And I know I can get long-winded. I'm trying not to. I just want to thank everyone that's here. Everyone. I want to thank our panelists that's here. And we should never forget that Tybee is Savannah Beach. We are the beach of Savannah. That's who and what we are. It's what we've always been. It's what we will always be. I'm very, very happy to have a Councilwoman here from Savannah that's sitting here with us. Please, and I said, I can't say much, I'm not going to stop. And I know Dr. Jamal Turay is also here with us. Thank you all. The Historical Society, Tybee Historical Society is right here with us. And I thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Julian. So let me introduce our distinguished panelists. We have such a highly distinguished panel of historians, public servants, and experts in the field. So let me introduce them to you. And let me ask you to hold your applause until we show appreciation to them for being here. Lots of you, there's lots of I'll be here momentarily. It's coming from Gary. So, Lawson is an African-American historian. He was born in Crescent, Georgia. He is a seventh-generation Gullah Geechee. He serves as a councilman and mayor pro tem of Darien, Georgia. He also manages the Geechee Gullah Ring Shouters. He is the National Federal Vice Chairman and former treasurer of the Federal Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor Commission. That's a mouthful. Was that Lawson? Right. Good to see him. He served as a consultant for a scene in the History Channel's 2016 series of Roots. He frequently leads cultural tours and riverboat cruises, and he's deeply involved in the research of the history of the song Kumbaya. I mean, this girl singing Kumbaya. Yeah. About which he authored a book and was instrumental in the song's recognition as Georgia's first state historical song. I did not know that. Yeah. So Mr. Lawson Griffin is here. Then Alderwoman Keisha Gibson Carter, she is on her way. And she also brought with her Alderwoman Bryant Lanier, who's here to talk to us about the weeping time as location and the history of that. I'll introduce Keisha. She's Alderwoman at large for Post 1, City of Savannah. Prior to assuming her position, she served as an executive director of the Rape Crisis Center of the Coastal Empire, where she transformed the organization, increasing income, expanding programming, and establishing new partners, and securing a nearly $1 million property prior to leaving that position. While she was there, she was awarded the 2015 Advocate of the Year by the United Way of the Coastal Empire, and the Rape Crisis Center received the United Way Volunteer Organization of the Year. She was appointed to serve on the Georgia State's Sexual Assault Protocol Committee and formed the Chatham County's first Child Sex Trafficking Task Force to establish a safe house within the coastal region. She serves several other initiatives that advocate for senior student athletes and the homeless. She has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice Justice and a master's degree in public administration, and she's most proud of her advocacy for victims of rape and sexual assault. Dr. Maxine Bryant is on the stage. Dr. Bryant, she holds a Bachelor of Science from Ball State University, Master of Arts from Saginaw Valley State University, and a Doctor of Philosophy in Human Services from Walden University. Also my alma mater, Walden University. She is Assistant Professor of Criminal Justice, Director of the Gullah-Geechee Cultural Heritage Center, and the Director of the Africana Center at Georgia Southern University. You must be very, very busy. Yes. She's a published author of 3 books and has been recognized and has received many honors. Her research interest specifically focuses on factors contributing to successful community integration of released prisoners. Don't we need that in our society today? Having written and presented on transitional jobs for newly released prisoners, the role of the Black church in successful offender integration, the impact of unaddressed childhood trauma, and barriers to successful offender reintegration. Thanks, Dr. Bryant, for being here. Our next panelist is Dr. Amy Potter. She has a PhD in geography from Louisiana State University. She is Associate Professor in Geography in the Department of Geology and Geography at Georgia Southern University in Savannah. Most of her research connects to the larger themes of cultural justice and Black geographies in the Caribbean and the U.S. South, where she has conducted extensive ethnographic fieldwork. The most recent research examines racialized heritage landscapes in the U.S. South. Very interesting. Particularly plantations and urban house museums. She's published in the Geographical Review, Journal of Heritage Tourism, Historical Geography, Island Studies Journal, and the Southeastern Geographer. She's co-editor of Social Memory and Heritage Tourism Methodologies, and co-author of the forthcoming book, Remembering Enslavement, Reassembling the Southern Plantation Museum. Thank you, Dr. Potter. And then our last panelist is Dr. Kara Bridgman-Sweeney. She's lecturer in anthropology at Georgia Southern University and director of the Digging Savannah Public Archaeology Initiative. Through community-wide networks and partnerships, Digging Savannah works to promote the preservation of heritage sites in coastal Georgia. Dr. Bridgman-Sweeney serves on the Georgia National Register Review Board and is a member of the Archaeology Task Force for the City of Savannah. She's instrumental. She didn't add this, but I'm adding this to her bio. She has been instrumental in locating and researching the site of the Lazaretto, right here on Tybee Island, and burial ground of the enslaved on Tybee Island. So let's show appreciation to all the so much in contributing to our education, higher education, and to our community service. So, why are you taking this time? Well, we need to show appreciation for them and their expertise. So, here's how the evening will work. Each of our panelists will have about 10 minutes to share a presentation from their experience and expertise. They know that I will politely stop them soon after 10 minutes. We want to respect everyone's time, right? We give everyone an opportunity. However, they will probably have some information that they wanted to share that they're sharing. We will have an extensive period of time after the panelists present for you to ask questions. Okay? So we know we have 5 panelists is kind of a lot. But we wanted to have a broad spectrum. Welcome. Good to see you. Come on in. Yes. you'll have an opportunity to ask questions and take a deep dive into what they have presented. If there is a question that comes up that's a little bit off the subject, then as a moderator, I'm going to take it over and say, hey, that's a great question, but we're here to focus on this. So I'll try to keep us within the silent round. Let's see. We have a few people that are on Zoom, so we'll take some questions from Zoom as well. So we'll intersperse them throughout. That's it. So I'm just going to turn it over to our first panelist, Mr. Watson Griffith. And Mr. Griffith, you can take the microphone, you can pull the stand over if you want to pull it out from the man if you want to, or you can stand if you prefer. You take the microphone, but as of now, the floor is yours.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This coffee looks so good. My name is Griffin Watson, as he said. I'm a seventh generation Ghanaian. And you can start off with this talking about people. James Napoleon Rogers was a slave. He was a slave. James Napoleon Rogers had a son by the name of James Rogers, but they call him James Monkey Rogers, basket name or nickname. Similar to Clarence Thomas. His nickname, believe it or not, is and was Boy. You tell me that the next time we see him. Then James Napoleon Rogers' son, his son, and then after him, Leon Rogers. Leon Rogers had a nephew by the name of I'm a direct descendant from what you know as the weeping time. Most people refer to the weeping time of those rainy days of March 2nd and 3rd. The people from the plantation, mostly the Butler plantation. I know it's been said and commonly known that they came from the Hampton plantation, but Pierce Butler didn't only enslave from that plantation on St. Simon Island, but he did own the slaves that were there on the Butler Island. And they do things of exchanging. So he had some of his enslaved individuals that were on the island. We're going to learn a little bit more at the plantation that perhaps not in the history books. The people. We're going to fast forward and then we're going to go back. For nearly since that time in 1859, only one major book was written. We know about the article that was written in the New York Times, the New York paper back in the day. But only one book was written. It was more of a children's book, believe it or not. And the second book that was written on this powerful message for the world to know about. For the world to know about. I was over in Africa not too long ago by the government invitation in Congo, Central Africa. Also over there in West Africa, Sierra Leone. And in Congo, they're talking about this great history of the weeping time. This is the only book that was written. The next book was written because no one else did. I wrote the book. It's called Weeping Time by Georgia Beachy. We wrote this book, another individual wrote a book, and I thought it could be worthy. You won't find it, you can look it on the internet. We stopped publishing it, and we held back on it because we thought there was someone else who could take it to the next level. Stan Bailey took it to the next level. So we thought it would be fitting to support what they were doing. Now, because of the land, people want me to rehash the book. Why? Because I'm a living, breathing individual from that plantation. Those individuals that lived on those plantations, most people think when they were enslaved, they were not large individuals. They had a lot of great traits. They were very skillful in what they did. When cotton was king, we all know about the rice, sugar cane. tomorrow, as you know about. He even helped me with the phrase. I like to call it the Trinity: rice, indigo, and cotton. They were masters at that. Matter of fact, one unique thing about us Bella Beaches, we do pretty good with the mosquitoes over here. We get big just like you, and just they don't bother us as much. Because we were on those plantations with my ancestors. And it's hardly a day of my life passed by. I don't pass by that beating time with those enslaved individuals live every day of their life. Spite to the contrary, if you're thinking that they were being horse whipped every day, no, they were a commodity. Yes, they were treated like cattle. Many of my ancestors that I know by name, some of them are fortunate enough because of history, some of them lived a long time, like Liverpool has it. Malcolm Bell wrote a book. These are the famous authors. This is where you guys can play a part. Let me know that cue when I get to my 10 minutes and let everybody know. Okay? And he wrote the book, and I tell this to everyone that I talk to out here in America, when I travel around the world, you yourself do the research. You yourself take the time to find out things that may perhaps others haven't found out. If you love your culture and you love history as I do, you will dig deep and find out some things that no one else knows about. They were weeping long before Marseille. You see, many of us, we were in the house. I had my little piece of the movie here for Spirit, and they called me. I was wondering why everybody was calling me every day to come to the set. I was just an extra. They had me on the inside working, with a tuxedo. I was what you call a house person. So we got a chance to hear everything. And those enslaved individuals that were on that plantation is taking care of that cotton, taking care of that rice, that indigo, cane, all of the other things that they were doing. Taking care of those babies. Yeah, they said breastfeeding is the best feeding there is for a child. Most people did not know those what you call nannies, and they had those babies that the slave masters had to make those children healthy. Didn't know that, did you? So they were there, they were skilled and crafty, and the most important thing that I like to mention about them, they learned to survive. And then the next generation learned to survive. And the next generation learned to survive. And I want to take it back on the plantation in my last few minutes. Because these individuals, they cared so much. Here's Papa when he almost was dying. It was Liverpool acid, which was recorded in some of the famous books that he died in 1936. And I say to those famous authors, I think God for them, that they gave us the knowledge so we can take it. And I hope the knowledge that I bring tonight in the books, that someone else can take it to the next level. And I said, well, famous author, I learned a lot from him, so I can take it to the next level. But he didn't die in 1836. What makes you smart? I said, well, I feel like Liverpool almost over. His great-great-grandson is in a nursing home right now. I go to visit him. He's alive and well. You know what his age is? The exact same age as mine. So I get a chance to go and talk with him in the pandemic. They wouldn't even let him out. But I'm hoping I can bring him to places like this. We're the same age. He didn't know much about it. I know more about his great-great ancestors than he does. And I said, well, I know he didn't die in 1938, which is a long time. He lived a long time. The last slave of the plantation. He tells me wonderful stories of the Civil War and how he treated them Yankees. Because he was on the Confederate side. He took them horses over Liverpool back up in them swamps. Nobody wants to go into the swamps. I'm sure my 10 minutes is almost up. And there he was, and he bragged and talked about it and made his little extra money down there on the island until the day he died, which was not 1936. It was 1938. How do I know? I tell you, I was standing on his tombstone, and I have a copy of his death certificate. Do the research. find out about these great people. Great people, the most important thing, Microsoft, that's my kid. Survive. They survive.
Thank you, Griffin, and I apologize for messing up your name. Yes. All right, so next we have Keisha Gibson Carter, and we also have Alderman Brian on here. So I'm not sure how you want to tag team it. All right, so take what I'll do. This one, did you want to go on stage?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Knock yourself out.
Can we take the card as well?
Please do, yes, make yourself comfortable.
Hello, Tybee. Greetings from your sister, Savannah. It is a pleasure to be here with you this evening. I asked Alderman Brian Lanier to join me, as well as Alderwoman Miller Blakely, who is in the audience, because we have together been in the struggle, in this fight of preservation of what we do know is the Weeping Time land in Savannah. And because Brian Lanier is the foremost authority on our council where this property is concerned, I thought it would be fitting that she would join me. And so what I'm going to do tonight is just lay a little bit of framework with regard to the steps and the various processes we have been through that brings us here tonight, but also to let you know what some of the current events and themes are. And from there, Alderman Brian Lanier will fill you in on the historical perspective with regard to the West Side community and what this property means to her and what it essentially could ultimately mean to the West Side community. So, we took office in January of 2020 as the first supermajority African American council in the history of Savannah, Georgia. We also made history, quite possibly I understand, in the nation as the council with 5 African American women on the council. And as proud as we are and were of that history, nothing did my heart more sad than in April of 2021, when that super African American majority council voted not to preserve the Weeping Time land.
That's right.
In January of 2020, Alderwoman Blakely invited myself and Alderwoman Lanier invited myself and Alderwoman Blakely to a meeting with Attorney Robert McCorkle, who was serving as the attorney for the Salvation Army, and who was interested in presenting to us an idea, a thought, a plan to build the Salvation Army on the Weeping Time property. At that time, Alderwoman Lanier presented to me that the community did not want the shelter in the area because of some plans that she will go on to tell you about. But I, as a decade-long veteran for homeless families with children, knowing what it means to try to set up shop in a community with a shelter and the issues I faced way back when, initially it was not all that palatable to hear. But as I began to be educated by this woman, who I often say is by far the smartest person on the council, I understood what it meant to put a vulnerable element on it, on top of a pre-existing vulnerable community. In addition, as a veteran representative of homeless families with children in the homeless population, I also knew that this quite possibly would be a deficit to that population, and that we were essentially moving those individuals from the core of our city, where the
services that they actually need would be. And so we moved from expressing to Mr. McCorkle the desires of the community. Subsequent to that, we went about with a protest led by Alderman Lanier. The NAACP got involved somewhat around the 25th of January. We're still now in January of 2021. Our council at the second meeting of January of 2021 postponed a meeting because of some challenges that we were putting forth with regard to, is this the legal time land? And when I say, is this the legal time land, you say yes. Is this the legal time land?
Yes.
And so we moved on. Later, there was a weekly time coalition that formed. This was a group of local advocates from all over the city, not just the west side. And the beauty of the weekly time coalition is that it's not just African American individuals, it's not just women, it's not just men. It's a blended representative of a blended group of representatives from our community, people who care about preserving the history of this huge event that occurred right in Savannah, Georgia. We later were led by individuals from the Church of God in Christ. In April of 2021, these elders spoke up and spoke out and was lending some weight to our effort. This was followed by many of our petitions where we were marching in the streets from the community all the way to City Hall. Then we went back and forth. Between this time, we've been following local government. You know that we had multiple city managers. And so the baton was passed back and forth between those city managers where this property was concerned. And we later were challenged with these city managers submitting information to the proper entities to get back with us as to whether or not this was the weekly time limit. What does that mean? We submitted information to our state for an archaeological study. We hired an architect. That firm is Brockington. Is it Brockington Architects? Brockington Associates. And with all of that, we still because it's not information that is pleasing. And so that's what I'm trying to speed it up a little bit because Alderman Lanier has the good details of all of where we are now. Nonetheless, the report ultimately was sent. We were told that the report would be sent to the Preservation Board, but instead it was sent to, we were told that it would be sent to the state, but it was sent to a Preservationist Board, to Ms. Rachel Black. Ms. Rachel Black acknowledged that she was not the person to determine whether or not it was the weekly time property, but encouraged our local government to work with the neighbors and the residents and the coalition and the groups who were advocating for this property. That plea fell on deaf ears. Fast forward, the city council makes a decision on a 5-4 vote. Myself, Alderwoman Blakely, Alderwoman Brian Lanier, Dr. Estelle Shabazz were the 4 dissenting council members to essentially preserve the weekly time limit. And so, subsequent to that, many more meetings with the Weekly Time Coalition, many more marches and protests in front of the Salvation Army, and ultimately now, Reverend Leonard Small led police and helps to lead the Weekly Time Coalition, has filed a lawsuit, and the first hearing with that lawsuit will be in court on this coming Friday. So, is it the Weekly Time land?
Yes, it is.
4 minutes is good.
So I'm going to get you that much fast. So, I'm Bernadette Lanier. I am the great-granddaughter of Cordy Butler. I'm the granddaughter of Bessie Butler. I'm the daughter of the first 5 days of her life. She was baby Butler, Bernice Quinn. I live 5 blocks from the Weekly Time property. I'm a 4th generation resident in the community, in that neighborhood, in that street, 4 generations. And the last generation neighborhoods, they didn't have paved roads, the drainage was bad, the trash wasn't getting picked up. These were the issues. So my dad, literally, the longshoreman, gathered some other relatives and members of the community and this home. Those were the problems of that generation. Then along comes my generation, the next generation, and we have a different set of problems. We have unchecked growth and development. We have industrial intrusion, commercial intrusion. So we have different problems, environmental problems. And then we had an opportunity under the Old Johnson administration to do the research of our area, which includes the greater West Savannah, 3 neighborhoods, that's Hudsonville community, the closest one to the river, West Savannah, and Woodville. So we got opportunity to create that history. A historian was hired to work with us. These are children who grew up in West Savannah, who walked to Barton School every day, who played on Barton Playground, we lived in this area, we consumed this area. And we found out in 2006, and doing this research, that the land that we had played on all those years, children of the community, that this was the area of the largest sale of slave individuals in the United States. We didn't know this. I mean, we live here generations, and we're just finding this out with butlers. So with that, we started to recognize and commemorate the land, the place, the event. We joined with Dr. Queasy, a graduate of Emory, who was led to the property, and we started every year going to the property, and we had a ceremony. We got a historic monument to be erected with Old Johnson near the property, and a little further down the street. It's more convenient for the tourists, not actually on the property. However, now, as more people find out about the Whitney time, the Butler Plantation, and what happened, of course, this is American history. So we need to preserve that land. And because it's a large piece of land, the lumber company, Bradley Lumber Company, is the company that is on most of the land that is not the highway of a school. And then there was the Bartow piece that we're talking about. So we weren't able to save the property, but we thought that because the average poverty in West Savannah is 30%, with some enclaves of 80 and 90%, that we did not need a homeless shelter to bring another poor population on top of the population, and folks are just trying to stay in their homes and keep their properties and own their homes. So this is what we're up against, and you will find out more from these professionals here. So thank you all for being interested in this. I love your facility here. Thank you. I wish I could take it home.
Thank you so much, all over there. Yeah, sure. Yeah. I'll bring you up on the stage. So, Dr. Brian, if you would come to the microphone.
Evening.
Evening.
University. I do have slides. I don't know if they're going to be shown. Okay. So I was asked to speak about the legacy of slavery. And so first and foremost, I guess I'm an educator, and educators use slides. So, and I have my notes here with me. And I'm going to be tying this in. It may seem a little bit disconnected initially, but believe me, I'm going to tie it in before my 10 minutes are up. So, my information is there. We can go to the next slide. William Shakespeare is quoted as once having said, "A rose by any other name still smells as sweet." And what he was really saying here is that it doesn't matter what a thing is called, it's what it is. And so when I say slavery by any other name, it's still the controlling and exploitation of people. And so when we look at the word legacy, and that's what I was asked to speak about, the legacy of slavery, usually when you think about legacy, you think about something that is passed on, like a parent may leave a legacy for their children after they have
Next slide. Here we go. We can go on to the next slide now. Okay. So normally we think about slavery as people being owned property by definition, if you will, of slavery. And what is the law in our thinking? And a modern definition of slavery is the exploitation of other people for personal or commercial gain. And so when we broaden that explanation, it begins to take on a different look. Next slide. So if we were to consider what slavery has left us, let's consider these things. First of all, there's mass incarceration, another which is really connected to the prison industrial complex. Some of you may be knowledgeable of the 13th Amendment, and it reads, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist in the United States or any other place subject to their jurisdiction. And so that's been called a loophole. So slavery was abolished with the 13th Amendment to a degree, except for those who have been convicted of a crime and served time. They can be slaves or enslaved. And I'll talk about that in a second. So let's dig a little bit deeper. In 2021, Blacks were incarcerated in prisons throughout the United States, nearly 5 times more than their white counterparts. 1 in 81 Black adults is serving time in a state prison. And right here in our own state, in Georgia, more than 50% of the prison population are Black. So what does that mean? That means that there are more Blacks in the prison industrial complex than any other group, right? And so that kind of reminds me, anyway, of chain gangs back in the day, which was a direct result or direct result of slavery.
That's right.
Because when slavery ended, the power structure had to find a way to continue to be in power, to continue to make money, to continue to have a profit, to continue to control and exploit the population that brought money into this country.
That's right.
And so the way to do that loophole was the prison industrial complex. And for those of you who don't know, that's when we use prisoners for labor and pay them next to nothing for the goods and products that they produce. And so the state then exploits the people who are incarcerated, who are primarily Black. And that's why I say slavery still exists. Now, slavery exists in another way too, political. When we take a look at voter suppression, which is targeted primarily for Black and low-income people. So voter suppression means moving where people can register to vote, or moving the polls, or refusing things like water to those who are standing in line to vote. And so what happens is that oftentimes, lower income people are discouraged from voting because it's being made too hard to do. And that means people with money and people with power are more likely to vote, and they vote in their interest, often to the disinterest of people who are of color, of Black people. And so that's another way that people's inability to get to, for example, the polls, their whole inability benefits other people and their interest. The educational system is another way where slavery shows up. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana originally, and when I came to Georgia, I got very involved in a number of things in Savannah, different committees and whatnot, particularly around the criminal justice system. And I was appalled to realize, I was just shocked to realize that the name we call young people, primarily young Black men, who are in elementary and junior high and high school, who've gotten in trouble with the law, and who've done things like getting a fight and been charged with aggravated assault, we call them designated felons. undesignated felon.
Yes.
That just ripped my mind. And I've been in many conversations and I'm trying to say we need to change this, but it's not a Savannah thing. It's a Georgia thing. And it goes back to the people we vote to put in office and
Yes.
make the laws and the policies. And I had an opportunity to visit some of the alternative schools in Savannah, and I met some of these designated felons. And they're young men, young women, young black men, young black women who've been labeled and cast aside, and they've been told you are no good, you're not going to amount to anything. And so we set them up for failure. We set them up to be enslaved.
Yes.
Juvenile delinquents. Delinquent? Is there not another name that we can call, that we can refer to children who don't have the supports that perhaps other children have? Are we setting them up to be enslaved? And finally, I gotta talk about what's going on right now in the state of Georgia. The current legislators are reaching out to universities and colleges across the state, and they're saying we want a tally of all of your inclusive excellence, which is another word for diversity, which is another word for people of color, which often refers primarily to black people. We want to know how much money y'all spending on these folks. And we want you to justify the money that you spend for the programs that are set to benefit diverse populations, including people of color, including black people. So there's government intervention in our education. And finally, I want to talk about the generational legacy that slavery does leave. We can go to the next one. The trauma of slavery lives on. The trauma of having, of being treated like cattle, like cattle. There's a woman by the name of Joy DeGruy who wrote a book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And in it, she gives this description, this example. In slavery time, a mother and her children may be working side by side. She's teaching them how to grow the rice or how to grow the crops or cut the cotton down or what have you. And the slave master comes and he says, oh, you got a pretty one there. You got a nice little hump there. And to protect her children, she says, oh no, he's kind of dull. No, she ain't about to nothing. So that child hears that, and that child begins to think, I'm not much of anything. And what the child doesn't realize is that the mother was really protecting them from being taken away from her. That child grows up, and now fast forward to the 21st century, and black mothers are still protecting their children, sometimes by saying that they're okay. You don't, I don't want you to mess with them. I don't want you to intervene in their lives in a negative way. I can remember even when my own son was in 4th grade, and the teachers wanted to label him as having attention deficit disorder. And I don't know whether he really did or not. I wouldn't let him get tested because I didn't want him to be labeled. I didn't want him put into a system that was going to be detrimental to him. We're fast forward to economic suppression. I want you to think about this. For years, blacks were the currency. Enslaved blacks were the currency.
Yeah.
How do you get from being currency to being able to have a healthy relationship with currency?
Yeah.
Think about that. Economic suppression, economic slavery. So I said I was going to bring all of this home to the weekend time. Behind me, you have a picture. And the picture is actually called Critical Race Theory. It was drawn by a man named Jonathan Harris. And if you look at it carefully, you can see a white person painting over a painting with white paint. And you see Martin Luther King, you see Malcolm X, you see other people who are pertinent to Black history. And what the person is doing, the white person with the paint, is whitening history, is erasing history. But when we want to get rid of valuable land, such as the reaping time,
Yes.
what we're doing is erasing
That's
history.
right.
We're denying the existence of something that is very important. It was called reaping time for a reason, I'm told. I'm told that for 3 days and nights it rained like all get out. I'm also told that for miles you could hear the weeping of women who had been torn from their children and their men. And then to try to erase that significant occurrence,
Yes.
and try to act like it didn't exist, or try to pretend that putting a Salvation Army building is going to be the answer?
Yes.
No, not at all. Because if slavery has taught us anything, if slavery indeed has left us a legacy, is that we need to remember from whence we come, or we will repeat the mistakes that we made. We will continue to make the same mistakes. So Weeping Time Coalition, you're on the right track. Because if you're going to leave a legacy as it relates to slavery, we have to remember, we have to leave the memory. We can't allow the powers that be to erase our history. Because before there was U.S. history,
Yes.
there was Black history.
Very much, Dr. Ryan. And you can remember that, as she said, this is all about American history. And not only
Yes.
are people of color affected by the legacy of slavery, so am I, as a white male Caucasian, affected by the legacy of history. So thank you very much. So, Dr. Potter, if you would come and share with us, Dr. Potter is going to talk about how we go about commemorating the history of enslavement.
Just want to thank Ken, and I want to thank Julia always for your efforts here in Tybee. It's incredible. And I want to thank our panel. It's an honor to be here with you. So my name is Amy Potter, and you can go to the next slide. And what I would like to talk with you about this evening is to think about the ways that we have remembered or actually forgotten enslavement. And my research has focused on tourism as the sense of remembrance. And so that's where I want to draw us together to think not only in the U.S. and hopefully all over the world. We're really excited about all the examples. Show you some examples from the United Kingdom. Next slide. So just a little bit of background. One of the things I didn't mention in my bio is that my research is driven by a collaborative initiative called Tourism Reset. And it stands for Race, Ethnicity, and Social Equity in Tourism. So if you look at my research, the common thread is to social equity in tourism practices and to recover those marginalized heritages. Next slide. So what I want to talk about is something that I've been looking at for the better part of a decade, and that's the Plantation Museum, right?
Yes.
The modern day legacy of the plantation. And I have this quote here from Ira Berlin that the plantation is ground zero for race relations. Next slide. So I want to talk about how did we get here? How did we get to plantations that romanticize enslavement? So the plantation in the South achieved epic status in our country's symbolic landscape. I'm a geographer, so we focus on landscape. Historically speaking, these plantations have valorized the magnolias, the moonlight, the pillars, guides wearing hoop skirts, instead of focusing on the people who created these landscapes, who toiled. Instead, visitors are regaled with stories of romance, mystery, scandal, and enchanted by these elaborate costume guides. How we got here, we're So these symbols of opulence and gracious living were markers of subjugation for others. So I've included here an image. This is from Natchez, Mississippi. I don't know if any of you have been to Natchez. It's on the Mississippi River. It's on the bluffs. And when you look out, you can actually see Louisiana. It's just right across the river. And this image is from a book. I don't know if any of you have heard of the pilgrimage. It's an annual event. The women of Natchez actually created this event during the Great Depression to revive the economy of the town. So they opened up their plantations to visitors from the north, and we can unpack that. And so this image here is accompanied by a quote. This is from a book called The Majesty of Natchez, and it was published in 1962. And it really captures this romanticizing of the plantation, right? It's like, come take a trip across the threshold of time, leave behind the cares of this moment to stand refreshed again in the long shadow of the great white pillar past that proudly lingers here. Next slide. And of course, there have been other books, essays, and poems that create this nostalgia for the plantation era. And the most popular, memorable expression of this is, of course, 1939, Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind in movie form. So the Southern plantation has traditionally reproduced this Gone with the Wind era of Southern domesticity. Next slide. So what I want to do is talk about, I'm an academic, and the ways that academics have actually critically engaged the Plantation Museum. So this is the work published in 2001 by my colleague David Butler, who began to challenge some of these white-centric narratives, talking about the whitewashing of the plantation. In this research, he examined brochures and looked at the representations of these brochures of 100 plantations. And he found little to no mention of enslavement and the material culture of the enslaved represented in those brochures. Next slide. The next major piece of critically examining the plantation was a book by Eichstätt and Small called Representations of Slavery. And if you look at this date, this was 20 years ago. And this book actually examined 100 plantations in Georgia, Louisiana, and Virginia. And these authors created a really interesting typology to look at historic sites and how they were engaging with enslavement. So one of the typologies was symbolic annihilation. These were sites that ignored the institution and experience of slavery altogether, or treated it in a perfunctory way. The next category was trivialization and deflection, where slavery and African Americans are mentioned, but primarily through distortive mechanisms. So the benevolence of the plantation owner, the affection of the faithful slave. Then you have segregation and marginalization. These are sites that include information about enslaved people, but present it through separate tours and displays that visitors can choose to engage with if they wish. And of course, the final category is relative incorporation, and very few sites fit into this category. These are sites where the topic is woven throughout the tour. And of course, I don't know if you're familiar with Whitney Plantation. It's in Louisiana, opened in 2014. It is
Suppression.